It's at the Manu Bay Reserve on the corner of Manu Bay Road and Wainui Road.
Okay, yeah, I'm just going to ask some really quick questions while that help is being arranged.
Yep.
Now.
Yep.
How old is he?
27.
Is he breathing?
Yeah, he's breathing.
What is his name, please?
His name's Torren.
And what is his last name?
Martyn, M-A-R-T-Y-N.
Thank you. What is your name, please, sir?
My name's Ishka.
The idea of travelling by motorcycles around New Zealand has been something we'd been dreaming of for a long time. The freedom of travelling on two wheels with just the essentials was something new and exciting for the both of us. New Zealand sits in the middle of the South Pacific, home to the Māori people who have been on the land for close to 1,000 years. The country is made up of two main islands, the north and the south, and the diversity between the two range from rolling green hills to ancient glaciers and just about everything in between. Our plan was to spend 3 months zigzagging between the islands in search of waves, adventure, and an experience that would fulfill a lifelong dream. Alright, let me go back a little. Ishka and I are best mates from Byron Bay, Australia. We've known each other since school days and have travelled the world together making surf films. But it hasn't always been like this. Before being a filmmaker, Ishka scratched through numerous other jobs, rustling up just enough money to support his travelling addiction. The same kind of goes for me too. I've always loved travelling and surfing amazing waves, so I'd save just enough time and money to get me to them. When Ishka and I began travelling together, one thing kind of led to another, and now both of our lives have grown around doing what we love. Coming from Australia, where just about everything is either trying to bite or sting you, we found ourselves at ease arriving in New Zealand. One of the things we were most looking forward to was the freedom that we'd have on two wheels. We were so grateful to have the new bikes for the journey that was ahead of us. But before we could get too far, there were a few minor adjustments we needed to make to the bikes. Thankfully, another good handy mate of ours helped us put together some surfboard racks and extra storage space that we knew would stand up to all the bouncing and rattling around. When it came down to packing our bikes, obviously finding the space for everything was going to be our first struggle, and the things that were going to take up the most space were the two things that were most important to us: surfboards and camera gear. I could only fit 2 boards on my bike, so I decided to take a 5.4 and a 7.6, with the idea and hope of having all conditions covered. On top of that, we still had to fit all the essentials. The plan was to travel light, but nothing felt light about the bikes when it was time to hit the road on our maiden voyage. When the time finally came that we were driving out of the city and into the countryside, we were so beside ourselves and on such a high with our new setups and what lay ahead of us.
It's at the Money Bay Reserve on the corner of Money Bay Road and Wainui Road.
Okay, do you have difficulty breathing or swallowing?
A little bit.
A little bit? Okay. So help has been arranged, okay?
Yep.
Right, so I want you to watch him very closely. Now, if he becomes less awake and he vomits,
Yep.
then turn him on his side.
Yep.
Okay, and if he gets worse in any way, call us back immediately with further instructions, okay?
Okay.
No problem, you take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh no, they're going down there.
I was pretty rattled during that little episode. I had no idea what was going on at the time. I could hardly breathe, and there was a stage at the start where Ishka thought I could have died. Luckily, things improved pretty quickly.
How's your head?
How's it look? B to the face.
Not one.
As it turns out, I had a minor anaphylactic reaction to a bee sting. I had absolutely no idea that I was allergic to bees, and out of all the dangers I'd associated with a motorcycle journey, I didn't think bees would become my number one fear. It seemed pretty essential to get my hands on an EpiPen and some antihistamines for some peace of mind before we really got ourselves off the beaten track. It felt so nice to get a few days under our belt and cover some ground. We'd had a couple of waves with the crowds along the way, but finding perfect waves to share with just a friend is one of the best feelings a surfer can experience, and this whole trip was about getting as remote as possible. The feeling of contentment riding through the country surrounded by beautiful landscape with everything we needed on our saddles was something pretty special.
Ooh,
As a surfer, our lives revolve around weather patterns, and it's so rare that all the elements line up in and out of the water. It's so special getting to experience those days, and it's a feeling that's hard to describe. But that day was one to remember, and we felt like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. We woke feeling excited and humbled, knowing that where we were on the East Cape is the first place to see the sunrise in the world, and we were surrounded by beautiful, sacred, mouldy land.
I'm a trained operator.
You are. Know how to use this thing?
With pleasure.
We'd been linked with a friend of a friend who, ironically and quite comically, happened to run a little family business that literally puts honey on the table. I understand bees are extremely important to our ecosystem, and New Zealand is known for its manuka honey, which is also known to be extremely healing and medicinal. But at the time I had other things on my mind. This is so skit.
Oh my god.
Oh, it nearly went down. It was unbelievable. Good shit. Thanks, man. Shit. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All the best.
Contain.
I'm sure it would be awesome. Some. Oh.
Coming for
Pushing your luck.
yeah.
You can smell the honey.
You hang around here and you're going to get bees on your
Out of here, let's go. As ironic as it was at the time, it felt good to throw myself in the deep end. We learnt a lot from John, and that little insight gave me even more of an appreciation and respect for bees and their contribution to life as we know it. We needed to start making our way south as we had some ground to cover and weather on our tail. But as we were starting to learn, things don't always go to plan, and we had some hiccups along the way. No, 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 no! Okay. What have you done there? By the time we got ourselves back on track, the weather was no longer on our tail and had well and truly caught up with us. We passed a few warning signs, but couldn't imagine the weather getting any worse than it already was. And by the time we were in the thick of it, we were just on top of this mountain pass and we'd never felt winds so strong and unpredictable. We didn't really know what to do at the time apart from just trying to get down the other side in one piece. stupid. That was psycho. What happened to you?
I just couldn't, like, as much as I leaned and steered, it just kept pushing me over.
So dangerous.
Now, the scariest thing about wind is you can't really see it coming, and you drive through a little pocket and there'll be absolutely no wind at all, and then you turn a corner and just get blown halfway across the road. It's pretty scary. We stopped at the nearest pub for a debrief and a dry night's sleep, and we were lucky to time it with the biggest band in town and made a couple of new mates while we were at it.
We were getting up together. Sailor! Sailor! Because me and Tim haven't played together for a long time. We're playing in just one chord.
You put it in front of the lens.
Long lens.
So that's Tip and Hartley. Tip, T-I-P and Hartley.
Hartley is very
good. If the air can turn it in.
I find the feeling of riding a motorbike similar to the feeling of freedom when riding a wave in a lot of ways. They have their highs and lows, but that combination of the smells, the sounds, and that pure feeling of weightlessness in the open air, it's almost as if time stands still. I feel like it really brings you into the present moment. We pretty soon realised that our plans were often dictated by the weather and the waves. The only certainty we had was that our spot on the next ferry to the South Island was booked. The North Island was amazing, but neither of us had been to the South, and the feeling of going somewhere new and unfamiliar is something we were really looking forward to. We hadn't even set foot on the South Island yet, but just floating in, it felt like we were in a completely new country. The South Island is significantly larger than the North and makes up less than a quarter of the country's population. We were so looking forward to the open space ahead of us, and we're expecting the waves to be a whole lot more consistent. From what we gathered so far, we knew the water was also going to get a whole lot colder and the weather a whole lot wetter. But it was exciting, and it really felt like the adventure was just getting started.
You still filming?
Yeah. Probably the best footage we're going to get for the next week, so I might as well keep rolling.
The novelty of the South wore pretty quickly, as our first few days weren't exactly the welcome we were hoping for. But it was nothing that a couple of cuts of morale couldn't easily fix. Look at that little grinder. While our first few days in the south were wet and cold and the surf wasn't exactly pumping, these perfect little waves and the feeling of surfing somewhere for the first time with nobody else around was just as fulfilling as anything else. And it was the whole reason why we were on the road in the first place. Planning to head off the grid, and we knew we were in for some wild weather, but the forecast for waves looked really good and we were frothing. So we stocked up on some supplies that would see us out for as long as possible. Get my feet wet.
That was too easy.
That was way too easy.
Was it anticlimax?
It was a bit of an anticlimax. But now we've got this, so this is a real climax.
That's not.
Hands are getting cold. Should we set up?
Yeah.
Get into the red line. Start the fire. The weather down south can be so unpredictable, and it'd change at any moment. It kind of felt like whenever we'd start to get a little bit comfortable, we'd be pretty quickly caught off guard. Wow, look at the cold. Wow, do you reckon we're going to be alright? Look at the lean on my bike. Whoa!
Oh, it's so windy.
I can see ice.
A Morning sunshine.
Cold as snow. Look at the ice. You're kidding. It's snowing. Look at it. Look at it. It's fully snowing. Oh my god. Oh my god, look.
It's proof.
Possum fur. I'd hardly had a dry wetsuit since we'd been on the road, and as the days got shorter and colder, it was starting to take a little more motivation to get in the water. So cold right now.
Mate, just stop talking about it and just put your ready on.
Oh my god, that was the best I've ever seen the whole time. So epic having our new little base camp, really felt like home, and being able to come and go with lighter bikes made it easier for us to search and surf new waves. But even being as mobile as we were, there were still a few places that we could only access by foot.
Not the rubber glove. Oh man.
Oh, look at that one. Whoa. Oh. Either going to be success or carnage, or both.
Yeah, a bit of successful carnage, I reckon.
destination in the world. My boots.
That road looks really far away, and then that's about halfway.
We were pretty jazzed to have had some fun waves to ourselves, but we knew it was going to be a fine line to make it back to camp before the weather had set in. In classic New Zealand fashion, things were turning pretty grey pretty quick. It had been a rough and wet few days. Ishka's tent had flooded out the first heavy night of rain, and just about all of our gear was soaking wet. We were pretty content with our little shelter. By the time the sun had poked its head just long enough for us to dry some undies and stretch the legs, we were keen to pack up camp and keep rolling. We were really looking forward to what the deep south had to show us, and we were eager to get on the road. Countryside was constantly changing, so wild and spectacular. Some of the areas we were driving through were absolutely mind-boggling, the kind of things you see in magazines and on postcards. This is what inspired us to travel to New Zealand in the first place, and that humbling feeling of being surrounded by it all was something that I'll never forget. A good mate of ours had highly recommended we check out one of his favourite areas. The end of the day was creeping up on us, and we were pretty tired, but determined to get to a little hut that was tucked up in the mountains. And the idea of sleeping with a roof over our head in complete solitude after the past few rough days we'd had sounded pretty bloody good. The little trail we were following was amazing but challenging. It had been a long day on the bikes, and we didn't really know where we were going, but it was getting late. We really didn't want to be riding in the dark. We passed a hunter along the track that told us we didn't have far to go, but it was turning into a bit of a wild goose chase, and we were getting tired and losing daylight. We both had this weird feeling about the guy's advice, but neither of us knew any better, and we were determined to get to the hut before dark. It felt like every 10, 20 metres we'd get to another puddle or another crossing, and we had to stop, check the levels, and we were getting pretty tired and over it.
This looks really gnarly. There's like big rocks and stuff. Let's try that. Yeah.
My feet are wet. We're pretty much ready to like, yeah, we're pretty deep. By the time it was dark, we were feeling pretty defeated from the day, kind of tripping on where we were. We had a look at the offline maps. We were nowhere near the hut.
I wasn't tripping on it at the time.
Not at the time at all.
Now looking back on it, looking at the offline maps and seeing where we are and how grossly misguiding his guidance was,
More just like,
and how gnarly the road was after when like he made it sound like we'd just done the gnarliest bit and then it got way gnarlier and we had nowhere near where we wanted to go.
he was too
like
smart and savvy. He's like, if he's a bad person, he's a really, really good bad person. So I thought you were winner, because I thought I was the biggest pussy.
Nothing makes sense for what he said. I don't know.
Tell you the secret?
What?
Put my knife in my top pocket after that. I already know that he's got a way bigger knife and a gun, so...
Yeah, well that's the thing. He's definitely got a gun.
Maybe he's just... Then, like, I got myself like worked out, and then I was like, well, we're in New Zealand, we're in hunting, like, maybe he's just mad, he's just not a normal person.
And we're like on these Hellman motorbikes, he probably thinks that we're
Hellman,
proper
right?
Hellman, and we're just like full city bitches.
Not city bitches, we are full pussies.
That's worse than my pasta spill the other night.
So hard off it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I reckon you can almost sacrifice that stuff on the grass there because...
Maybe he thought we were mad dogs. I'm some nerd with like glasses.
Maybe he
and
thought we were
you
mad
got
dogs.
a bob
I
cut.
was seem like I made a point to try and seem sort of rattled so that he didn't think we were mad dogs.
Why is that?
What do you mean?
Should always seem like we're mad dogs. Don't you reckon?
Well, not when you want someone to give you realistic advice. If they think you're mad dogs, they'll just make a real gnarly road. Be like, oh yeah, no, you guys will be sweet.
That's what he said. He thought we were mad dogs. We're on motorbikes. We like had our helmets on. We're like looking like mad dogs. We're mad dogs. Look what we're eating.
Yeah, he could vandalise our shit, but he's not gonna.
He's not gonna he's not a vandaliser. He's not like a...
Well, if he doesn't find us,
he'll find us. He's got like infrared and shit.
He's not a predator, dude.
He is a hunter. He's a hunter. Well, turns out we woke up alive with all limbs attached. Funny how you get in your head sometimes. That's kind of the beauty of being somewhere so remote. The feeling of vulnerability adds so much more to the adventure. And waking up in the morning, it was hard to imagine what was going through our heads the night before. We never made it to the hut either. the engine light going, and 10,953 kilometres. Full tank of fuel. We'd put a lot of pressure on ourselves to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time, and as we should have well and truly learnt by now, plans don't always go to plan. What's going on?
The truck's flipped. The road's closed, but they should open again soon.
The latest one I've had is it's going to be updated at 4.
There's a heap of cars. I mean, you'll be amazed at how many cars are on the other side too. There's hundreds.
We got problems too.
You guys overheating as well?
Nah, we've done a clutch or something.
Oh, fuck me.
What? There you go, a bit of light, does that?
Cheers, mate. Yeah, just, you know, just fixing some shit.
Working. Right. And there's no traffic. Should we punch it before the next stitch up happens?
Yep.
Turns out we had a few more issues and we weren't as handy on the tools as we thought.
Yeah, well, I'll chuck that battery in there and we'll see what happens with that.
Thanks so much.
No, you're all right, mate.
It had been a long day and we'd had a bit of a bad run. By now we'd travelled over 12,000 kilometres, and considering we'd only had a couple of minor issues, we thought ourselves pretty lucky. But we needed to keep moving to get there before the morning, which meant breaking our only rule of not riding through the night.
Comfy?
Bright out there. Shit, hey.
How good was that mission from the other side of the island? Driving through the night, almost crashing, getting stuck, traffic by an accident, breaking down. All for this.
I'd had a couple of close calls with a possum and a guardrail the night before, and as rattled as I was to get back on the bike, we were convinced that if we kept chasing the swell, our luck would have to eventually turn. We knew it was going to be a wet and cold ride to the waves, so I thought I'd put on my wetsuit early to kill two birds with one stone. Which was a great idea until we got a few hours down the road and I had to lighten the load a little.
That snow. Oh, just what are you doing to us?
Nick sun out.
Oh, you clown.
Best worst idea ever. I can't even put my fingers to do this up. I'm thinking about putting my weddy gloves under my motorbike, just trying, even though I can't move, but that was like really, really painful.
Yeah.
Please lift the tap
under the
in my glove.
In reality, it was our coldest, wettest, roughest day yet. I think I ended up spending about 15 hours in my wetsuit, and I didn't even end up surfing because the waves were a complete write-off by the time we got to the beach. We were pretty over it by the time we found some shelter that night.
So we had like a really, really rough day and we checked ourselves in and we've made up a temporary drying room in the bathroom. We sort of got too far ahead of ourselves thinking we were going to be surfing and getting good waves these couple of days, but we've accepted defeat and we've surrendered in this little hotel room.
Never trust in New Zealand weather forecast.
You know what they say?
It's supposed to be sunny this afternoon.
4 seasons in one day. You down there? It's quiet.
Why are you moving so quick?
We got caught off guard slothing around in the morning, thinking that the waves were going to be a complete mess. But as quickly as things had turned bad for us before, this time we had a little luck on our side and we stumbled across this perfect little setup all to ourselves. We were so stoked. We were feeling so content after that first little session. It was just so nice to wash away the last few days. We lazed around in the sunshine, thawing out and soaking it all in. We were in the most beautiful part of the country with not a soul in sight and nowhere else we needed to be. It was just turning into one of those special days that everything was falling into place. had such a special day and a perfect night under the stars without a cloud in the sky, laying next to the fire. We were nearing the end of our trip and it was time to start heading north on the home stretch. Everything felt like it was going our way and we're on such a high. Our only concern now was crossing back over the pass where we had that tough time on the way down, and Ishka had that really close call with an oncoming car.
Went from the worst ride to the funnest ride.
So fun.
How good was that?
Wow.
had mixed feelings as we made our way back to where it all began. We'd travelled over 13,000 kilometres, and the idea of parting with our lives on two wheels was such a strange thought. We'd had such an amazing journey without any serious problems, and it felt so nice reflecting on just how incredibly lucky we were to be here in the first place. Our journey around New Zealand also became a journey within ourselves, and and we learn a lot along the way. From what started as a pipe dream, turned into an experience that will last a lifetime. And I think some of the most important things that I've learnt overall is to make the most out of what you have, be present, and not take life too seriously.